What's up, residents? It's Jacob and I back again, and we have a special guest with us today, the lovely Klayton Fioriti. Say hi, Klayton.
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
He has obviously the famed Jurassic Park YouTube channel, which is great. Go check it out if you haven't already. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely go check him out.
Thanks.
Yeah, so obviously we're going to be talking about Godzilla King of the Monsters and how it's sort of settled on us down the line, because it's been basically 2 months since it came out. I saw it on 28th of May, a few days before the US. Jacob, when did you see it?
I saw it opening weekend, so it was probably that Saturday after it came out, so just a couple days after it initially.
But yeah, still very soon.
I'm pretty sure I saw it the same day.
Cool. Well, what are your guys' opinions on it now? Because obviously when you first saw it, you might have had a bit of a honeymoon phase, because everyone also always kind of has that. But now it's been 2 months. What do you really think of it?
All right, well, I'll mention mine first. So when I first watched it, I don't know if it's what it was. Was it the fact that like the theater wasn't that packed? It wasn't just for King of the Monsters, but just in general, my local IMAX just didn't have much people in it. I got my dad to come, and he's always been like cool with these monster movies, and we've always kind of done that together. I got a couple of my friends to come, and I was just really kind of hyped to have a good time. But there only ended up being about probably like 30 people in the theater when it started, and so that kind of like, you know, making the Godzilla stuff and all that, I was like, well damn, so that may have set me off in the wrong direction kind of initially. I liked the movie, I enjoyed it, I loved it, but you know, at first I wasn't as happy as probably I wanted to be, but then we just watched it again recently, and it was almost like it was a different movie. It was the same movie, but the way I was able to perceive it was just so much more positively. So yeah, that's just kind of like my initial kind of thought of how I feel about it right now. What about you, Klayton?
Well, I saw it with a lot more people in the theater, and I took my dad and my 9-year-old sister, so it was a pretty good experience. Everybody was positive. I enjoyed it. The way I look at King of the Monsters, though, is it's probably the most well-made Heisei era Godzilla movie that wasn't in the Heisei era.
Yes.
It's and
yeah,
there was by the way, there's a lot of tributes, references, callbacks, whatever you want to call them, to stuff like versus Mechagodzilla 2, Destroya, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, all those movies. And I guess
there's tons in there.
I mean, really, when I first saw it, I was like, well, damn. I honestly think this is probably one of the best out of that series of movies, and I really like the Heisei movies. I still agree with what I said when I saw it, which I put it on par with something like Biollante or Destroya. I think it's that good. There's obviously better Godzilla movies like the original 1954 classic. I thought Shin Godzilla was better, but those are different beasts. This is much more of a kaiju battle movie that we haven't really seen this. What do you think, since Final Wars?
Yeah, it's an MMA boxing match that you know, it's like pay-per-view, but it's with giant monsters that destroy and flatten cities.
Yeah, it did feel like I would say instead of MMA, it was definitely more of like a WWE sort of, one of them kicks the other one's butt for a little bit, and then that one will get back up and kick that one's butt for a little bit. So, but yeah, you're spot on, Klayton. It really was, to me, like the best Heisei movie ever made that wasn't a Heisei movie.
That's how I feel, yeah.
Yeah. And
there's even a bit of like Showa in there. You know, some of there was a little bit of, you know, the cheesiness aspect. You know, the way they kind of paced the movie was very similar to how they do a Showa film. So you know, the first one, Godzilla 2014, was very much a homage to like the original, like the 1954 one, with a sprinkle of Heisei in there. This one was very much a full-on Heisei film with a sprinkle of Showa in there.
Yeah. And another thing I really liked about it is they've got one moment in the movie, one really great character moment. I guess we can talk spoilers, right? This movie's been out for, over a month?
Yeah, this is a 2-month later review. If you haven't seen it, like, what are you doing here?
Look, dude, Serizawa's death, that was great. The whole nuclear bomb in the ancient city where Godzilla's kind of juiced up to... That whole scene to me was just... The imagery of Godzilla in ruins just looks fucking cool with a nuclear bomb by his face.
I love his lair. I love his lair.
Yeah. It was that word. The more I watched it, the more I think that may be my favorite scene from the movie. When I watched it again, it hit me a lot when I first watched it, but even going back to it, I still felt like I knew it was happening, but I still felt like those emotional, like, this is sad, I was like connecting with Serizawa, and I was like, this is some deep stuff right here, compared to the rest of the movie, which was, it was deep, but you couldn't really feel how emotional it was. The
Mothra scene definitely made me feel, though.
The Mothra scene was another good one, but it was it was a little bit quicker than this one. This was like a 10-minute long, we knew that he was going to sacrifice himself sort of deal, and then how he spoke in Japanese there at the end, and that kind of like made that just added like the final little like so I
definitely hope we see the repercussions of that. Like, I hope we see like a monument for Serizawa somewhere, because they didn't even really mention Bryan Cranston's character in this film, and I kind of wish they did, because he provided a lot of research to help Monarch. So even like, I'm gonna miss Serizawa in this Godzilla vs Kong, but I understand completely why they did it. But I just hope we see or hear like his name being called, and maybe something that he left behind, like the notes he gave to Cal Chandler. I hope they take that into consideration for the plot of the film, instead of just pretending that his death never happened.
No, they probably will, because they spent a lot of time working around that, and I mean, it is a great moment. So they should probably really look to what the original Godzilla did with the death of that Dr. Serizawa, and how he was kind of like a presence. He wasn't in the movies after that, but he was kind of like a presence in Destroya and in Raids Again and stuff like that. But you talked about the Mothra thing. That Mothra moment, I'm assuming you're saying when it came out of the cocoon, right?
I mean, when she sacrificed herself for Godzilla.
Well, yeah, that's a cool moment too. But that moment when Mothra comes out of the cocoon and you actually hear that, the fairy music. I could not believe. I was sitting in the theater, like, this sounds so stupid, but like, I felt like a 3-year-old watching Mothra versus Godzilla. I was like,
you're cheesing.
I was like, damn. I don't know why this makes me feel so happy, but it does.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like, Mothra doesn't get a lot of the credit that she deserves, at least like out in the open, but I think we all have a special place for Miss Mothra, the queen of the monsters, for sure.
This film's definitely convinced me that I like Mothra. I would have never got a Mothra figure before, purely because she was never that big of a kaiju for me, but this film makes me recognize her as an actual character, rather than just like this plot element that would show up and kind of help Godzilla every once in a while.
It's probably the best role Mothra's been in since the original Godzilla vs. Mothra, because in the Heisei Mothra movie, where you had like Batra, that kind of got weighed down, and don't even get to like the other Showa movies with Mothra in them, where she just shows up to like save some islanders from a giant crab, Ibira, whatever. Even in GMK, like, I thought Mothra was better here than in GMK. Rodan, again, that's great. That design for Rodan alone is awesome.
They were all spot on. Like, they settled down. Like, I could easily see them being just as iconic as the original designs.
Yeah, they did a really good job with, I think, all of them. King Ghidorah was great, or Ghidorah. My nostalgia towards the Heisei series makes me have to call him King Ghidorah. I know some people call him Ghidorah or Ghidorah, but I have to call him King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of stuff. We've had a lot of comments saying that we're pronouncing it wrong, but it's because we were raised by Directorial monsters where they pronounce it King Ghidorah.
King Ghidorah.
So in our eyes, that's not wrong if Toho would publish that. Everyone's got tons of different pronunciations for it. That's absolutely fine. You recognize it's being translated from Japanese, so there's gonna be different interpretations of what it actually
however
is.
You want to say it.
To us, it's Ghidorah.
Well, we're all in our 20s too, right? So I mean, shit. I had Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah on VHS in like '98. At the latest would have been like 2000. I mean, I watched that a lot years and years ago, along with Destroya on like HBO or something. I had a Space Godzilla toy from, Trendmasters? The Heisei series was like what I kind of grew up with, apart from Showa, of course, but King Ghidorah just sounds cool.
King Ghidorah.
Right. would you know, now you've had a few months to kind of decide whether you like certain elements or not, would you like for Doherty to come back and make another film, film, TV series, anything Monsterverse related really? Because obviously we've got Winged next, and I think the good thing about the Monsterverse is that they've given other fans a chance to make what their vision of a Godzilla movie should be, and it's given such variety, but each one of them has in their way pleased a different fan like every time, but also made most fans relatively happy, especially when you compare it to other big franchises from the comic book scene.
Yeah, so I mean, I like what he did with King of the Monsters, but like you just said, each one of the Monsterverse movies kind of have their own personalities. You can just tell. And I think that was another reason why when I first watched King of the Monsters, I was not let down, but a little bit lower than I wanted to be, is because I was still like expecting it to fit more with Godzilla 2014 or even Skull Island. But then after watching it a second time and just kind of like putting the big picture together, I was like, this was literally a big giant, like, he made it to impress the Godzilla fans, especially the ones that were raised with the Heisei era, like what Klayton was just talking about.
He made a film that he himself would want to see.
Yeah, and I like that about the Monsterverse. It's just what each director wants is what they're being allowed to do. Like, it doesn't seem like Legendary is cracking the whip on them too much or trying to force them to do anything. And
which is good.
So as much as I have no problem with his take on King of the Monsters, I'm okay with just seeing a new mind every movie, as long as it doesn't get too wacky and out of place.
Yeah, I really liked the 2014 Godzilla. I know some people hated it, and I know that the people that apparently hated that movie really loved Kong Skull Island. And for me, Kong Skull Island, that was my least favorite out of the Monsterverse movies because, well, I don't even necessarily think it's bad. I just think I like the more.
It's third on the list so far.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what was cool about King of the Monsters was it's kind of a cool line that they pulled through it, whereas Kong gets crazy fist fights in the day and all kinds of crazy stuff happening on Skull Island with this humor. Godzilla King of the Monsters has some of that, but it feels in between Godzilla and Kong, if you know what I mean, like tonally.
And that's probably where I'd put it on my critical, like, on my critical list as well anyway. Like, I do think Godzilla 2014 is a masterpiece. I love it. I love that film. I think Kong Skull Island is a really good film. The visual effects in that film are fantastic. I really like the cast they've got, but I think this one's a good midpoint. And it seems to, I mean, the community seems to have reacted that way as well. I think it's appealed to more people than the previous two in that way.
I can see that's probably true. I mean, with me, like when I think King Kong, I either think the 1933 black and white movie or Peter Jackson's King Kong. Yeah. Now, when I think Godzilla, I mean, King of the Monsters is a pretty good encapsulation of, if you're not thinking of there's been a lot more Godzilla movies, but like, I feel like this newest one they've made is a good representation of the full series, in my opinion. I mean, it's hokey in some areas. You've got crazy plots of ruling the world, and it's got space alien Ghidorah, but that's very much in line with like the source material, and it looked great.
Which is why the critics don't like it.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it's I the more I think about it, the more I like it. Admittedly, I've still only seen it once.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's fine.
But I do like it.
Yeah, and that's. But you're speaking the truth though. Like at least what you're saying is I think that's a truth. So. Because the movie, the more you think about it, the more you see that it's not just like, holy crap, why wasn't this like the Dark Knight just with Godzilla instead of Batman? Like you go into that expecting that, and then you're like, you don't get that, and you're like, ah, man, why did it was like kind of like not what I wanted. But then you think about it and you're like, oh, this was awesome because it was a pure service to the history, like everyone's history, and like how all the different cool little parts that you may have missed, and then you see it the next time. And I definitely think King of the Monsters is a movie that will become better with every time someone watches it, and I think it's already established that it's going to become like a cult like favorite, definitely amongst the Godzilla fans,
probably,
and just with people in general. It may not have made a lot of money,
like
but
it's become as a film.
I think you guys
it's still playing in theaters right now as well, and like it's kind of become this like late night showing kind of thing, like this late night cult showing that they like cinemas put on, because like it's, you know, like they'll sometimes show like The Thing, or they'll sometimes show like these kind of niche films that people enjoy, like from a cult following. They've kind of put King of the Monsters in that same like category, which is, you know, it's found its own audience, which is good. You know, like Jacob said, it might not have earned the most money in the world, but I'm sure Legendary's earned some money. I'm sure they would have done somehow. And like Toho has expressed that they are very happy with the way Hollywood's been doing it, and that they've pretty much said, we're happy that they've basically remade Godzilla again from the other American film. They've kind of made what was wrong right, and they like that, and it seems like Toho is willing to kind of just give them the license to make more, which is an exciting prospect.
Yeah, just kind of...
Yeah, I'd love to see more.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would, and, you know, like you said earlier, Klayton, off camera or off recorder here, you said that Godzilla vs. Kong you think it has a real good chance of doing well, and, you know, I think that there's some reality to that, and I'm definitely hopeful. So, but regarding King of the Monsters, like I said, once it comes out, comes out on my birthday, August 27th on Blu-ray for us Americans, even sooner than that digitally, but I think it'll even build more of a fan base. There'll be more dedicated hardcore fans, because I just feel like this movie's just better every time you watch it, and now I understand why Al went to go see it 8 times, because it just gets better like every time. So yeah, King of the Monsters, it's 2 months later, it's a lot better, I think, than initially. Like, you're able
2 months later, our impressions have gotten better.
Yeah,
that's I guess what we can take away from today is, because there was a big, you know, everyone was kind of responding to the backlash in a way that wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. People were calling others that didn't like it not true fans, or they were calling critics like complete morons because of the way they reviewed it. And necessarily, you know, Godzilla's never been appealing to absolutely everyone, especially critics.
Right, yeah.
So I think now, a few months later, people have let the idea that the critics don't necessarily like it go down, and they've kind of accepted that not everyone's going to like the film, and we're kind of able to just kind of make our own opinion out about it, instead of just listening to what the big YouTubers have to say about it. And we've kind of settled, and it's gone, okay, we appreciate what's come out from it. I can now agree what we really like about the film and what we didn't necessarily like about the film, and it shines more over time. The things I liked when I first saw it, I really like now, and the issues I have, I kind of also shine through. But, you know, overall, I still think it's like an 8 out of 10. I still absolutely love it, and I cannot wait until I get it on Blu-ray. I'm going to buy my own projector, and I'm just going to show it to as many people as possible, because I'm just going to be like, look at this beauty. Look at it. So I'm definitely going to do that.
To relate it back to what I do at Jurassic Park, you guys probably just had your Lost World of the Godzilla movies, only Lost World, half the audience didn't like it and half the critics didn't like it. From what I understand, most people liked King of the Monsters, right?
Yeah.
It was just the critics that were divided.
Pretty much.
Okay. So like...
Yeah, mostly overall.
It's like 40%, 41% of critics liked it, and I think it's on like 85% of audiences liked it, which is probably what Legendary likes to hear.
If Lost World can get away with gymnastics over the years and have people like me loving it, King of the Monsters is going to be okay with all those other people like giving thumbs up. So like, I think
King of the Monsters gymnastics scene is probably when Thomas Middleditch makes the joke about gonorrhea. That's probably going to be the scene where everyone just goes, I hate that.
Got a catchy name for this one? Ghidorah. What? She said gonorrhea. Ghidorah.
I hate that bit.
Yeah.
Everything else is great. That's like the only one bit where it's like, way to make a joke about the most powerful creature on the planet. Not the time, friend.
Yeah.
Gonorrhea. It wasn't even that funny of a joke. They could have left that 2 seconds out, but hey, it's all good. It's all good.
Before we go, we've got a nice little cameo from our good friend Davis, also known as Titan Goji, who is gonna give us his opinion on Godzilla King of the Monsters 2 months down the line. Over to you, Titan Goji.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. These past 2 months had some ups and downs within this whole Godzilla King of the Monsters discourse. You have some people who really enjoy it, while you have some people who really hate it. Me personally, I'm more in the middle. Although I did find it really enjoyable, there were some things I didn't necessarily like about the film. I feel like the characters were poorly written, the humor did fall a little flat, and overall the script was a bit weak. And definitely felt more like a $200 million fan film that Michael Dougherty directed. However, the movie did have enough highlights to make it worthwhile. There's a lot more emphasis on the monsters this time around, of course, considering that there's 4, or I guess if you've already seen the movie, there's more than 4 of them. But I did understand what Michael Dougherty was going for. There are some subtle themes that do relate to climate change in the film. One example being how King Ghidorah is able to manipulate the weather by creating these massive storms and whatnot. But other than that, Godzilla King of the Monsters is your typical standard summer blockbuster film that just happens to have giant monsters in it. Although I will say one experience that I'll never forget is actually watching the movie at the Pickwick Theater when G-Fest was going on this year. Just seeing a Godzilla movie in a room full of Godzilla fans just makes it like one of the best experiences any fan could have. Like everyone was shouting, screaming, cheering, clapping, whole 9 yards, everyone had a good time. It was so much fun. So yeah, Godzilla King of the Monsters isn't necessarily a great film by any means. I put it more in the middle. Like it's kind of one of those movies that can be both good and bad depending on how you look at it. While I did find this movie more entertaining than a good number of Godzilla movies out there, at the end of the day there are still other Godzilla movies that I would personally rather watch. So those are my thoughts on Godzilla King of the Monsters 2 months later after a few viewings of it. Back to you, Dangerville.
And let's all clap for Titan Goji. Thank you for listening to our little update on whether we think King of the Monsters was a good movie for the fans. Thank you for coming. You've been an absolute delight. And I hope to see you in another video very soon. I've been Alastair. Here is my good friend, Jacob.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening to us.
And we'll see you in the next video.
Peace out.
Later.